lieutenant came out and says, we got a triple out in West Houston, y'all got it. And that was the Wanstrath case. I knew when I left that scene that these people had been murdered. CME's office, from day one, going the opposite direction that I was going. You know, we're gonna rule this suicide and I want to show you why. She killed her husband and baby, and then killed herself.
It was insult upon injury.
And one of the reasons was there's a history of suicide in her family. Her mother killed herself. And, you know, by the end of the fourth day, we like, no, she was murdered too.
We were basically sitting here with proof that an esteemed medical examiner had made a colossal mistake.
The older I get, the harder it is to talk about. Okay.
You want to take a break?
No, I'm fine. I knew it was wrong. And the more we come up with proving his murder, the more they were leaning towards suicide.
I think I inferred that they needed to be looking at Markham.
What was almost a murder-suicide turned into pure murder when no gun could be found.
He was so amoral. He had no sympathy. He had no conscience about what he was going to do and what he did. It's money. It's all about that filthy lucre. While we have focused on one guy, Markham Dustsmith, then we learn about all the others.
I was just there to do a job and looking at the little fella in the crib.
Laying on his stomach and head to the side. And
I raised the weapon and pulled the trigger.
Everybody that touched this case in some way was forever impacted.
It's described as one of the most sensational murders ever in Houston.
No comment on reaction to the state being denied?
when I get a case, I want to work it like, you know, as best I can. But I never want to go through that again. You know, having to fight the political fights I had to fight, and the pressure they were putting on me indirectly to, you know, to back off, which shocked me, which really shocked me.
What do you think about, you know, like the moniker, the cop who wouldn't quit?
I didn't.
In 1979, the murders of a couple with wealthy ties and their young son shocked Houston. The years-long investigation that followed was just as shocking. Revelations of murder-for-hire plots, manner of death rulings that were wrong, and a tangled web of suspects with an age-old motive, investigators believed: money. And all of it may have gone unsolved if it wasn't for a determined detective, the cop who wouldn't quit.
Yeah, I'm Johnny Bonds. I'm a retired police officer. I was a cop in Houston for over 40 years. This is like the career case, but I'll tell you, I don't want to go through that again. We're on a bluff here.
In retirement, Johnny Bonds enjoys the slowness of Arkansas's Ouachita Mountains and the quiet of the trees and river below. Hundreds of miles from the city that 4 decades ago gave him a case that would define his career.
The lieutenant came out and says, all right, we got a triple out in West Houston, y'all got it. And that was the Wanstrath case.
Diana and John Wanstrath and their 14-month-old son Kevin all shot to death. A housekeeper found them on the morning of July 6, 1979. Homicide Detective Bonds and his partner were assigned the case.
You had the husband and wife in the den. The wife's laid on the floor in front of the fireplace. The man's sitting in an easy chair. And if you didn't see the wound in the blood, you'd think he was asleep. He's sitting there and had glasses on, his head down. It looked like somebody asleep. Baby's in a nursery, dead in the crib, shot in the head. Wife shot in the head. And then the husband was shot in the head too.
The Wanstrath house was in a well-kept neighborhood of newly built brick homes on Houston's west side.
Houston was not near as big as it is now, but it was a big city. Your kids could go outside, play. It was just a very easy time.
The couple, who were about to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary, had recently adopted Kevin and had moved back to Houston, Diana's hometown. They were settling back in with old friends like Ellen Davidson.
They were just very ordinary people. John was very intelligent, kind of studious. Diana was adorable, precious. But they were just like any normal couple. They loved each other. We would go to dinner with them. I mean, they were just a normal couple, and they were fun to be with and good people.
Diana grew up in Houston's wealthy River Oaks neighborhood. She attended Lamar High School and St. Anne's Catholic Church, all in a desirable zip code. Unable to have children of their own, Diana and John adopted. She was a stay-at-home mom. He was an oceanographer. Kevin was their pride and joy. An entire family murdered was sensational.
It was very shocking. It was front page news for a long time.
The baby's lifeless body.
Why kill the baby?
Was just something Johnny Bonds couldn't let go.
I'll never forget that picture. It's one of those things you wish you could. I mean, if it wasn't for the blood, you'd just think his baby asleep in the crib. You know, laying on his stomach and head to the side, and a bunch of stuffed animals around him, in a puddle of blood under his head. And, you know, it's just one of those things that you wish you never had to see.
Inside the Wanstrath house on July 6, 1979, a housekeeper discovered the bodies of Diana, John, and their toddler son, Kevin.
My friend Ann called me, and it was late in the afternoon. And I knew something was wrong because she said, I couldn't remember your number. I couldn't remember your number. And so I said, what is the matter? And she said, Diana and John, they're all dead. She goes, Ellen, they were shot to death. And I almost became physically sick.
The couple were dead in the den. Kevin was killed in his crib. An innocent family. Speculation swirled. Could it be double murder-suicide? Homicide detective Johnny Bonds knew one thing.
Before we left there was no doubt in my mind this was triple murder. It wasn't a suicide. I knew that day that they'd all been murdered.
And what made you so certain?
No gun. The main thing was there wasn't a gun or ammunition in the house.
That night, Bonds interviewed Diana's adopted brother, Markham Duff Smith. He was younger than her, a flashy insurance salesman, and always impeccably dressed.
He looked like he just stepped out of a GQ photo shoot. I mean, if you'd ever met him or saw him, he was always immaculate. He had his nails manicured, you know, styled. His hair was styled, cufflinks, you know, three-piece suits, double-breasted suits. The guy was, shoes always shine. You know, he dressed to impress and had an air about him like you'd think he was a millionaire.
4 years earlier in 1975, the medical examiner ruled that the siblings' mother, Gertrude Trudy Duff Smith Zabolio, took her own life. She was found dead with a pair of pantyhose wrapped around her neck in a River Oaks home. Her husband had been out of the country. Trudy had a sizable family estate. Ellen Davidson never felt that Diana was convinced,
And this is Diana.
that her mother killed herself.
I don't think she believed the story about the strangulation.
And when Bonds asked Markham about their mother's death, he got answers he couldn't ignore.
He was so blunt about saying she committed suicide and that she was crazy. It just didn't sit right.
Others were also suspicious.
The night after she died, I went to sleep. My husband and I, it took us forever. And the next morning, I woke up and almost in unison, we were saying, it was Markham. I mean, it had to be Markham. But how he did it, and that was the question.
Police confirmed Markham Duff Smith was home with his wife when Diana, John, and their 14-month-old son Kevin were shot to death in their West Houston home. As homicide detective Johnny Bonds and his partner were working their investigation, the esteemed Harris County Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Joseph Yahemchuk, brought in a quirky forensic psychologist to the case named Dr. Thomas Whaley.
He's going to be doing psychological autopsies. And this was the first one that had ever been done in Harris County. I'd read about psychological autopsies. I didn't quite understand, what they did. He was kind of nutty. Kind of a nutty professor kind of guy, and trying to be a undercover, I don't know what he was trying to do, but we get calls from the neighbors and like, there's this guy here in this big hat and floppy, he said he looks like kind of like a gardener or something. He's creeping around all around the house and the neighborhood, and it was Whaley. And people tried to talk to him, he wouldn't talk to them. I mean, he was just weird. He was just weird.
Whaley was supposed to delve into the Wanstraths' backgrounds to help determine manner of death. Was it murder, or did Diana or John do this before killing the baby? Bonds feared the final report.
The more we come up with proving his murder, the more they were leaning toward suicide.
Dr. Yahemchuk was highly regarded.
I remember when I joined the police department, he was like the god of ME. He was the highest paid state employee in the state of Texas. He made more than football coaches at the University of Texas. He was the highest paid state employee in Texas. He had a law degree, and basically what he said was law. And everybody's like, Dr. Joe is like, whatever he says, that's how it is. You don't buck him.
On February 14th, 1980, 7 months after the deaths, the medical examiner released his ruling. It was shocking.
A friend of mine called and said, have you gotten your newspaper? And this was someone that didn't know Diana. And I said, no. She said, I want you to get your newspaper, Ellen, and I want you to sit down before you open it, because it was on the front page. And I went to pieces because I knew it wasn't true.
It was ridiculous. She killed her husband and baby, and then killed herself. And one of the reasons was there's a history of suicide in her family.
The ruling, double murder suicide. And it was Diana, the office said, who pulled the trigger, killing John, Kevin, and then herself. But what about the gun? Bond said Whaley theorized Diana somehow used an elastic band to propel it up the chimney after the murders, or that an unknown person buried it in the backyard or removed it from the scene to protect Diana from scrutiny. Bonds thought it was all absurd and vowed to prove it wrong.
I knew it was wrong. And I wasn't going to let that slide. I'm like, this isn't right. They can't be doing this.
In the early days of the investigation, Bonds established a possible motive that could apply to all 4 deaths: Trudy's, Diana's, John's, and young Kevin's. There was money to be had. Markham inherited around $100,000 after Trudy's death in 1975. The two had a strained relationship. A few months before the Wanstrath family deaths, Markham sold John Wanstrath a $250,000 life insurance policy that, as the executor of their estate, could yield him $500,000 if Diana and Kevin died too. Newspaper reporter Rick Nelson passed along some information to investigators from an anonymous caller that helped keep Markham on the radar.
He says, I don't know about the Wanstraths. He said, but Markham Duff Smith had his mother killed in 1975.
And the facilitator, the tipster said, was identified only as a coin collector. Markham's best friend was Walter Waldhauser. He was a slick-talking entrepreneur who was also a coin collector. This, Bonds felt, was a good lead. Bonds befriended Markham's wife, Cindy. She connected him with Waldhauser's estranged wife, Debbie. They were going through a bitter divorce and had a child. Debbie thought Bonds could help her case, he said, and little did she know she had a key clue in the Wanstrath murder mystery.
She knew that he had a friend that had been in prison that she'd gone with him to prison to visit this guy, and this was in the late 70s, and that he got out of prison, and that they went out and did things together, and said he's got a strange kind of a German name. He said, I can't remember his name. Said, but they wrote back and forth in each other while he was in prison. I said, well, you think any of those letters are in? He says, he left a pile of junk in one of the rooms. He said, there might be, in that pile of junk, he left it in there. So we went out to the house in Katy, and sure enough, in the bedroom, piled up about 3 feet high in the corner, just a pile of trash. And I started to dig around in there, and I found 2 letters, 2 Waldhausers from Alan Janecka. Never heard the guy's name before, and I said, this Alan Janecka, could this be? Yeah, I think that's his name.
Alan Janecka was from a big Catholic family. He was a star high school athlete and a pitching prospect, but dreams of making it in the big leagues fizzled. He enlisted in the Marines only to go AWOL. He started with small crimes in his small hometown of Weimar, Texas, eventually graduating to murder for hire in Houston. By this time, Bonds had a new partner.
Wanstrath murders, news clippings, photos, notes, court files. The 2 of us together, I think, made a really good team.
Detective Dan McAnulty was patient and meticulous. The case was in its 2nd year when they got the Alan Janecka lead, but they needed more than just that the 2 exchanged letters.
What we needed was some way to tie them together on this case.
So they looked at Janecka's criminal background and found that he and a man named Richard Bufkin were suspects in a previous murder. Bufkin was arrested, he was convicted and got early parole. Janecka was never charged. Investigators needed to talk to Richard Bufkin.
Another number there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, ma'am, my name is Bonds. I'm a detective with the Internal Affairs Division, Houston Police Department.
Yes.
I'm trying to locate Richard Bufkin. Do you know where I could find him?
Yes, he's my boss's son.
We were able to reach him. He was a truck driver for a company down by Corpus Christi, and we were able to catch him on the road by phone.
I don't really have the privacy to talk right now. All right, can you get on another line? Hold on just a second, please. Okay. Can I call you? Yeah, sure. Okay. You call me collect.
I tell him who I am, and I said, now look, I said, you've already been sentenced, you got your probation. He said, yeah, I don't want to mess up my probation. I said, son, I promise you, I talked to your attorney, I know Mike. I'm not trying to do anything to you. I'm trying to make a case on him. He said, yeah, that bastard ran off and left me holding the bag. Said he took off for California the next day and didn't come back, and said, left me here by myself, and I ended up taking a rap for it. And I said, look, I'm actually working on some other murders. I said there was a family in Houston, a man and a woman, a little baby. He said he wanted me to help him on that. He told me about he had a contract that killed his family for the insurance, that the woman's brother wanted him murdered so he could collect on the insurance, and he needs some help doing it.
He told me, I would waste the man and the woman, and he would waste the baby.
I said, no, I'm going to help you kill the baby.
I didn't get involved in that. I know you were in jail when it happened. Right. All right. Did you know that this actually did happen? No, sir. I never knew it happened. All right. What he described to you, Richard, did actually take place. Mister, I was in jail. I know you were in jail. You mean that actually did happen? That actually did happen. They killed a man, a woman, and a 14-month-old baby. The baby's asleep in the crib, and they shot it in the back of the head. Yeah, that's just how he told me he was going to do it, too. That's just how they did it.
And all of a sudden, everything was there.
That was a huge break in the case, because then we knew we're on the right track.
The case was finally speeding up.
I mean, I've been working almost 2 years on this and butting my head against the wall and getting nothing, and all of a sudden it all fell together.
For almost 2 years, the leads in the Wanstrath family murders were few and far between. Within a week of Alan Janecka being identified as a suspect, they flooded in. Johnny Bonds had a warrant for his arrest. He and his partner, Dan McAnulty, knew Janecka, believed to be the hired hitman, might be in Marietta, Georgia, if he wasn't in Houston. His girlfriend lived there. McAnulty got a flight, and he wanted to start with the girlfriend.
So we sat around the table. She wanted to know, what are we doing here? Well, we need to talk to Alan Janecka. She said, well, he's not here. He's not, he's in Texas.
McAnulty gave her some details about their case. What they did know since early on was the kind of gun they were looking for.
The slugs that hit the adults shattered, came to pieces. We couldn't do anything with it. The bullet that killed Kevin went through his head, went through the little mattress. There was a sheetrock wall, hit the sheetrock, went through it, and we cut it open, and the slug had fallen down on the floor plate underneath, behind the sheetrock, and you could have reloaded it. It was in perfect condition. So we took that, submitted it to the lab, and they measured the lands and grooves and the count. And it was an unusual weapon. There's only one weapon ever made that had those characteristics, and it was Colt Frontier Scout. So we knew exactly what kind of gun we were looking for. Never thought that we'd find it.
In Georgia, Dan McAnulty was about to prove him wrong.
And she goes back and takes the gun out and gives it to me.
Janeka's girlfriend just handed over the gun they had been looking for.
This was the envelope that I carried the pistol in. Never let it out of my sight.
Finding it had repercussions, not only for Alan Janeka,
We had a murder weapon.
but also for Harris County's chief medical examiner, Dr. Joseph Yahimchek, who, despite public criticism from Bonds and pressure from Diana's friends, would not budge from the ruling that the case was a double murder-suicide.
We were basically sitting here with proof that an esteemed medical examiner had made a colossal mistake.
For a year and a half, Johnny Bonds worked almost exclusively on the deaths of Diana and John Wanstrath and their 14-month-old son, Kevin. The family found dead in their West Houston home. More than 40 years later, Bonds can't get that image out of his head.
You know, always the kids are the hardest. I'm sorry. The older I get, the harder it is to talk about it. Okay.
You want to take a break?
Nah, I'm fine.
The case took a toll on Bond's family and well-being. For him, it was part of the job.
There were a lot of plans that got canceled because I had to work. You know, there were a lot of times, you know, I was supposed to be home at 5 o'clock and I don't get home till 5 o'clock the next morning.
Bonds also burned bridges, some within the Houston Police Department. He wasn't welcomed at the medical examiner's office, and there were heated arguments with the prosecutors, too.
And he said, well, I don't know. Maybe we ought to back off for a while. Oh, I hit the ceiling. I told him, I said, y'all back off. I said, you go ahead and back off. I'm going to go down to that grand jury and ask them to hear me by myself. I'm going to tell them about this conversation. I'm going to tell them what a chicken bunch y'all are. Then I'm going to call every TV station, every news media that'll listen to me and tell them what you're doing. And Onkin, boy, he got mad and he says, you're going to lose your job over this. And I said, just as well, I ain't doing a damn thing here. I said, I'll get a job driving a truck. I said, just as well, I'm not a very good homicide detective. I can't get a triple murder indicted.
Detective Dan McAnulty had found the murder weapon with Alan Janeka's girlfriend in Marietta, Georgia. Shortly after, Janeka was arrested. He told police Walter Waldhauser, Markham's friend, helped him get the gun, and that Waldhauser was also involved at the scene of the crime. Waldhauser's indictment and arrest followed. Initially, it appeared he planned to fight the case.
He doesn't want to cooperate, he gets a lawyer. Eventually, he decides that if he can help himself out, he will admit to his guilt.
In exchange for 30 years in prison, Waldhauser confessed. The lengthy confession included details about the Wanstrath murders and the motive. It was also the first time police heard someone other than investigators call the death of Trudy Zabolio, the mother of Diana Wanstrath and Markham Duff Smith, a murder. The medical examiner had ruled it suicide. Waldhauser was cold-blooded, according to Johnny Bonds.
He's probably the most evil of the whole bunch. I don't think any of this would have happened if he hadn't been part of this.
Waldhauser's written confession in many ways confirmed what investigators already thought. Alan Janeka, with Waldhauser's help, murdered Diana, John, and Kevin Wanstrath. And Diana's brother, Markham Duff Smith, was behind it, motivated by insurance money. But what investigators didn't yet know was that Markham was also behind the death of his and Diana's mother, Trudy, years earlier. That plot involved yet another man. Waldhauser outed Paul McDonald. According to Waldhauser's confession, he was the connection to Alan Ginecca and the plot to kill Trudy for Markham.
He calls Paul McDonald and basically says, I'm looking for a hitman. You know anybody to kill somebody? And Paul said he was sitting there and said Ginecca was sitting across the desk from him in a chair in front of the desk. And he said, hold on. He says, hey, Alan says, I got a guy here who wants somebody killed. You know somebody do it? And he says, I'll do it. And that's how it happened.
By this time, McDonald had moved to Florida. Local officers arrested him. He typed out a 5-page confession to Trudy's murder and was almost happy to see the Houston police officers.
He says, this is like a weight lifted off my shoulder. I'm worried about this. And he said, I am just so happy. No matter what happens, I'm happy to get it over with. And he said, I will cooperate with you.
And he was an excellent witness.
Paul McDonald claimed to police that in 1975, he drove Alan Ginecca to Trudy Zabolio's house on Ellery Lane in Houston's posh River Oaks neighborhood and waited elsewhere while Ginecca strangled her. McDonald said Ginecca never meant for it to look like a suicide. McDonald told police Ginecca then grabbed her driver's license as proof he did the job. According to Waldhauser's confession, McDonald then delivered that driver's license to Markham Duff Smith. With that, detectives believed they had the threads that tied Markham to all 4 murders. And it all started with the discovery of some discarded letters in Walter Waldhauser's old house.
Within 2 weeks from finding those letters, we had a case. I've been working almost 2 years, and it all came together that quick. From nothing to everything.
Prosecutors got an indictment. Bonds and McAnulty were ready to make an arrest.
He's in his nice house and living the good life and thinking he's gotten away with it. And had his girlfriend there, Tracy, answered the door. And we just pushed on past her and said, we've got a warrant for Markham, where is he? And so she said, well, he's in the bathroom. So he's in there shaving.
And he looked in the mirror, and I was standing in the doorway of the bathroom. I said, Markham, I got a warrant for your arrest. And he didn't act too surprised. And he said, well, can I finish shaving? I said, yeah, go ahead.
The warrant was for his mother's murder. The arrest then memorialized on film.
I mean, that was just like, we've worked so hard on this. It's like, I can't have his head stuffed and mounted. Here's a picture.
This is the Late Report with Dave Ward, the sports with Al Janis, and the weather with Charles Harrison.
And good evening, friends. Insurance man Markham Duff Smith is in the city jail tonight.
The man Bonds had suspected for almost 2 years was in custody.
Markham Duff Smith remains in the city jail tonight.
But there were more obstacles ahead.
No bond has been set.
We always thought the case was on the brink of disaster.
This man, Walter Waldhauser Jr.
With Walter Waldhauser's confession, detectives Johnny Bonds and Dan McAnulty now believe they had proof that Markham Duff Smith was culpable, not only for the death of Trudy Zabolio in 1975, originally ruled a suicide, but also for the deaths 4 years later of her daughter Diana and her husband John and their toddler son Kevin.
They were nice, decent people, and they never did anything to deserve what he did to them. Nothing, never.
Markham Duff Smith had already blown through his $100,000 inheritance from his dead mother's estate, and he had just sold his brother-in-law, John Wanstrath, a $250,000 insurance policy with himself as the beneficiary. According to Waldhauser's confession, Paul McDonald and Alan Ginecca killed Trudy Zabolio for a $10,000 payout. Waldhauser told police he hooked up with Ginecca at Markham's request to kill the Wanstraths and that he actually helped. It was July 1979.
I'll never forget that picture.
In his confession, Waldhauser told police that Markham wanted his sister and her family murdered. He had borrowed $7,000 from Diana, and she was putting pressure on him to repay it. Markham had talked about building a house and wanted his sister's input, so the plan, Waldhauser says, was to have Alan Ginecca pretend to be an architect and accompany him to a meeting with Diana and John at their house. This is how Ginecca said it happened.
They sit down, everybody sits down, and he opens up his briefcase immediately and sprays them with mace. I mean, it was just that quick. There wasn't any discussion. He just sprays them with the mace, and then Janeka starts shooting them. And he shot John first. Waldhauser grabs Diana and holds her on the ground. He goes over and he presses the gun against her head. It was a contact wound on her. And then he goes and looks in the hallway and said, the baby's in here, go get the baby. So Janeka goes in there and baby's asleep in the crib. And he said the light was on. He said he took his elbow and turned the light off and aimed and shot the baby. And then they left.
Waldhauser gave a different account in his confession. After spraying John and Diana with mace, he claimed that he immediately started walking out of the room and heard the first shot only as he approached the door to the kitchen, and then just kept walking out of the house. Still, Waldhauser made a deal with prosecutors, a guilty plea on 3 counts of murder for the Wanstrath killings, in exchange for just 30 years in prison and no charges in connection with the murder of Trudy Zabolio.
We saw it as our only way to get as many of the people involved as possible.
Paul McDonald, who played no role in the murders of the Wanstrath family, pleaded guilty to Trudy's murder. Alan Janeka not only denied strangling her, but also being involved in her death in any way. He was never charged in connection with Trudy's murder. Though Janeka eventually admitted to shooting Diana, John, and Kevin, he went to trial only for Kevin's murder, and he had to be tried twice because his first conviction was reversed based on an error in the original indictment. A second trial led to a capital murder conviction, which sent him to death row, where he gave a chilling confession.
And walked up behind him and shot him back in the head. From there, my co-defendant sprayed Mrs. Wanstrath in the face with the mace and grabbed the holder and threw her down, which then at that time I walked over and put the gun to the side of her head and shot her. From there, my co-defendant ran into the victim's bedroom, was looking for jewelry. And at that time, he told me, get the kid who's in the bedroom. As I walked in, opened the door and walked in, it was dark. I could only see from the hall light of the baby laying in the crib. At this time, my mind was completely blank. That I was just there to do a job. And looking at the little fella in the crib, I raised the weapon and pulled the trigger. Closed the door and walked out, and next thing I know, I'm driving down the road taking my co-defendant home.
For almost 2 years, police, family, and friends had to contend with an unbelievable ruling from the office of the Harris County Medical Examiner.
She'd been accused of being a murderer, and it wasn't true.
The finding that Diana Wanstrath killed her husband John and their 14-month-old son Kevin, and then took her own life. But there was no gun and no signs that Diana was suicidal. In fact, she was planning a party for the couple's 10th wedding anniversary.
They were very happy.
Diana Wanstrath's friends were offended by the ruling. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Joseph Yahemchuk dug in.
I had several of the detectives say, why you keep kicking that dead horse? You're just wasting your time. The DME's never going to change his ruling. He said, I had several of them saying, you're just messing up your career.
It was wrong, period, wrong. And it was every bit as painful as her death, because it was such an insult.
It was only after police recovered the murder weapon, had confessions and indictments, that Dr. Yahemchuk changed his ruling from murder-suicide to triple homicide. In July of 1981, more than 2 years after the Wanstrath murders and nearly 6 years after Trudy Zabolio's murder, Markham Duff Smith stood trial in his mother's case. Investigators suspected he was behind the deaths of his sister and her family, but he was not charged. A young Ted Poe was one of the prosecutors. Little Kevin Wanstrath was very much on his mind.
Kevin was born the same year my son was. My son is 44. And this year, that's how old Kevin would be. He'd be 44. I have a picture of Kevin that I have always had even when we were working on the case, I'd have it on my desk to remind me, this is why you're doing what you're doing. This is why justice must prevail.
The time leading up to trial was busy. Prosecutors had to catch up on a case that Johnny Bonds had been working on for 2 years.
We went to the crime scene, we went to different places, tracking witnesses down, and I spent a lot of time with Johnny Bonds and Dan McAnulty, hearing about the case and finding evidence about the case. And the more we found, the worse it got.
Walter Waldhauser gave police crucial information in exchange for a 30-year prison sentence. But while his confession led to indictments, he was eliminated as a witness when Markham went on trial.
Every time we'd bring it in, he'd give a confession. He'd go back to holdover cell and said, I just lied to the police. I told him that Duff Smith did all this stuff, and he didn't do nothing.
We knew he was talking, ruining his own testimony, and we made the decision, we're going to try this case without Walt Waldhauser. If we'd have put him on the stand, he would have been a worthless witness.
According to police and prosecutors, Waldhauser told at least a dozen inmates the same story, that Markham hadn't asked for anyone to be killed, even though Waldhauser signed a sworn statement otherwise. Those inmates landed on the defense witness list while Markham maintained his innocence, insisting police were to blame.
He thought Johnny Bonds and was framing him and setting him up, you know. That's what I kept on hearing time and time again. And I would say, why do you think he's setting you up? He said, well, just because he hates me. I said, well, why does he hate you? And so anyway, it went on and on, back and forth like that. And it was denial, denial, denial until the last day of trial.
And on that last day, a bombshell revelation.
Oh my God, they can't believe what just happened.
I looked over at Markham and said, you just signed your own death warrant.
By the time Markham Duff Smith went to trial for the murder of his mother, discovered only after the murders of his sister and her family, accomplice Paul McDonald had been sentenced to 16 years in prison for the murder of Trudy Zabolio. Walter Waldhauser got 30 years in a plea deal for the 3 Wanstrath murders, and Alan Ginecca had been sentenced to die after a capital murder conviction. Markham was facing the same fate. Candelario Elizondo was on his defense team.
You know, I said, you know, this guy might be found not guilty because there wasn't really anything to connect him with the offense aside from accomplice witness testimony.
Elizondo said Markham claimed innocence. The defense had at least 10 inmates on their witness list, including a man named Jerry Sol Eichenhorst. All were expected to testify that Waldhauser told them that he lied to police about Markham being behind the murders. The Friday before the start of trial, a huge break for the prosecution.
And all of a sudden, we get a call from the warden in the penitentiary that we needed to come to the penitentiary and talk to this individual.
We got an inmate here who says he needs to talk to you. Said he lied to you and he wants to tell you the truth. And I said, who? And he said, Jerry Sol Eichenhorst.
Eichenhorst was a convicted rapist. He told detectives that Markham Duff Smith promised him cash and to pay for his appeal if he would lie for him. And Markham gave him very specific instructions.
Yeah, and says, he gave me a script and reaches in his pocket and he pulls out a piece of paper, and it was what he wanted him to say in court. It was what he's supposed to testify to. And he gave us that. And we brought it back, and we had it fingerprinted, and Duff Smith's fingerprints were all over it.
So we had the script. All these other guys in the jailhouse, they didn't keep the evidence, but he did.
That's like the smoking gun.
It was the smoking gun. And so when he comes to testify, we're listening to all these inmates in the county jail and the penitentiary. The defense is putting them on one after the other, talking about how it's all made up. Walt Waldhauser did it, and he told me he did it, one after the other. I don't believe we questioned any of them. And then they called the inmate that we had talked to. He was the last witness.
For some reason, I felt like I saw a train coming at me. I felt like I was getting hit by a train. I said, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right.
Eichenhorst, a witness for the defense who was supposed to help Markham Duff Smith, was about to turn on him. it was a dramatic courtroom moment.
He had that paper in his pocket. He said, well, if you want proof, and he pulls it out. And they said Duff Smith turned just pale white. The first time in the trial he showed any emotion, said he sat at the table and he started shaking because he recognized it too.
It was a script. You ought to say this, you ought to say this, and you ought to say this, deny this, and it was a script. I looked over at Markham and said, you just signed your own death warrant. I'll never forget it for as long as I live. And there was Associated Press was there, see, all the TV channels, all the radio stations, and everybody was there, and I was there in the middle of this big bomb.
Elizondo says he asked for a recess. He says he was embarrassed and angry.
I didn't want anything to do with him.
Eichenhorst told the court why he told the truth.
Aren't you a snitch? Isn't that the worst thing in prison, being a snitch? He said, no, there's only one thing worse than being a snitch. And that's somebody who kills a baby.
Markham Duff Smith tonight is in the Harris County Jail with a sentence of death by injection.
The jury came back quickly, guilty for the capital murder of his mother. Prosecutors then brought in the Wanstrath murders during the punishment phase. Markham Duff Smith was sentenced to death.
There's relief. It was relief. I mean, it was heartbreaking that this is happening, but it was right. It was the right thing.
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, he was the last one we tried. I felt vindicated, and I felt like justice had been done. And I felt like Diana was vindicated too, because she'd been accused of being a murderer, and it wasn't true. So I felt good about it.
I respectfully assert my Fifth Amendment rights on the U.S. Constitution.
Markham was executed in 1993 after spending 12 years on death row. A few weeks before his execution, he was brought to court where he refused to answer any questions in a deposition before Alan Ginecca's second trial. On his final day, another bombshell. Quote, I am the sinner of all sinners. I was responsible for the 75 and 79 cases. It was his only public admission.
That surprised me, actually. I didn't think he'd ever admit that he'd done anything. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm like, well, maybe he's looking for redemption,
In 1993, Markham Duff Smith was executed for the murder of his mother. His death sentence also based on his role in the Wanstrath murders, all motivated by money.
I said, why did you do that? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, I did it for insurance purposes.
Walter Waldhauser and Paul McDonald had been convicted. After 2 trials, Alan Ginecca was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of 14-month-old Kevin. In 2003, Ginecca was executed. Johnny Bonds was one of the death chamber witnesses.
At that point, it was over.
Over for Alan Ginecca and Markham Duff Smith. Paul McDonald got a 16-year sentence for Trudy's murder, but Walter Waldhauser was released from prison on parole in 1990 after serving just 9 years on a 30-year sentence for the Wanstrath family murders.
He can't help himself. He's just a natural, evil person.
So it was no surprise to Johnny Bonds that Waldhauser would end up back behind bars. He changed his name to Michael Lee Davis, moved to Dallas, and later became involved in an insurance fraud scheme. A decade after his release from prison for triple murder, he was sentenced to 60 years for money laundering.
He gets out, he's gone. He'll go somewhere where we can't extradite him.
Johnny Bonds protests his release every time he comes up for parole and encourages others to do the same.
It's worked really good, and we kept him in prison for 22 years now. And I hope he dies in prison. If anybody ever deserved to die in prison, this guy does.
Michael Lee Davis, formerly known as Walter Waldhauser, is the only defendant still alive. He did not respond to our requests for an interview. He is housed in a prison unit near Wichita Falls, Texas. If he does not get paroled, his projected release date is the year 2059. At 75, Johnny Bonds keeps in touch with his old police colleagues. This, a 55-year reunion of his Houston Police Academy class. He's beaten kidney cancer and has had a book written about him. The Cop Who Wouldn't Quit.
What do you think about that title?
I didn't. And I hadn't yet. I'm still doing it.
He defied a powerful medical examiner and jeopardized his career.
You ruffled a lot of feathers. You made people mad. You almost got fired. But was it all worth it?
Yeah, every bit. No regrets, none at all. You know.
To pursue the hunch he had the very first day in 1979 when he walked into the Wanstrath family home.
I'll never forget that picture.
Long before he could prove Walter Waldhauser, Alan Ginecca, Paul McDonald, and Markham Duff Smith murdered innocent people for money.
It was all greed. It was greed. Absolute greed.
I think everybody that touched this case in some way was forever impacted.
We brought those people to true justice.
I wasn't going to quit.